Okay, Karima, you are host now.
Okay, thank you so much, Noah. You are co-host and also the doctor. You can share your screen. Thank you. Noah, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. So you can start admitting attendees.
Hello, colleagues. I just want to be sure. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, yeah. Doctor, we are seeing.
Yeah. All right.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the first workshop on research. So I'll give like 2 minutes for people to join in and settle down, and then we'll start right away. So Dr. Matlala, please, could you start the presentation from the first slide so that people will see the heading of the topic of the presentation, please? Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello everyone, so here Karima, the chairperson of pharmacy education. So I will just take the chance to let you know all that this is the first workshop out of 5 workshops that will be holding by the 5 regions. So the first workshop is holding now by the AfRO region, and we will be having 4 more other workshops related to research and also 2 other webinars, as we had the first one on the 20th February. So please keep up on the social media platforms, and I hope you will find this session informative and join the upcoming session. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you so much, Karima, for that. Welcome everyone once again. This is the first of the 5 research workshops which will be holding. So before we start, let me just take a minute to introduce our distinguished speaker. She's Dr. Molehi Matlala. She's a registered pharmacist with the South African Pharmacy Council. She obtained a B.Pharm from Rhodes University and obtained a master's and PhD degrees from the University of Limpopo. She currently works as a senior lecturer in the Division of Pharmacy Management and Public Health in the School of Pharmacy at Sefako Matok Health Sciences University. She has supervised several master's projects and currently a few PhDs. She's also involved in supervision of undergraduate research. She's a member of the peer review Center for Clinical and Pharmacovigilance at the SAPRA. She has mentored many pharmacists in practice as a lecturer and many pharmacists as a lecturer and fellow pharmacists. Dr. Matlala has also been appointed as a member of the SAPC Council 2019-2023, the Minister of Health, where she is current chairperson of the pre-registration committee. So today we have a very experienced speaker for this workshop, and she's Dr. Matlala. And Dr. Matlala, welcome, and we really appreciate you being part of this session today. It's the first workshop which is hosted by AfRO, and it's a global workshop. So, Dr. Matlala, you could unmute the mic and say a few words before we commence.
Thank you very much, Noah, and thank you to your group for extending the invitation to me. I'm looking forward to imparting the little knowledge I have on how to actually conduct the literature review. And I'm just going to, share what I know, and I hope we'll have an interactive session, or I hope that you'll learn something from this and you'll be able to then apply it wherever it is that that skill is required. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. So without wasting time, we'll move straight up to the presentation. Doctor, you have the floor again, ma'am. So go on with the presentation.
Thank you, Noah. I hope you are able to see my screen properly. So as I was requested, I'm going to look at literature review and systematic review, a practical and holistic approach. And I hope that all of you would have access to your internet, and so that maybe you can participate actively. I think from experience, I know that it's easier to remember what you learned if you do it. Okay. So I was glad to see that you have already been introduced to some of the concepts or definitions and the tools that are available to use. So I'm just going to go through quickly what we're going to do. The basics were already, I think, covered in your last webinar. And then we're going to do the how-to aspect. Then at the end of the presentation, I hope that there'll be a few questions. Okay, so I think just to recap on what you already learned or what you went through, to look at what is literature review. So some will say it's a list of books or in journals on a specific topic grouped by theme and evaluated with regard to your research. So what is important is you go into a literature review with a specific research topic or idea. So you then have those sources. But what is important is it has to be very objective. So the objectivity is determined by the topic. So it should be clear as you go on into the process. So the process is also concise, critical because you're not just going to look at every literature that is out there and put it into your review. You're going to critically look at its relevance, okay, to the topic that you want to deal with. And I hope they had sort of gone through the process that the length or the intensity of the literature review depends on the type of literature that you be, or the type of write-up you'd be doing. So if it's for your research topic and master's thesis or protocol, it will be very slightly extensive, but not as extensive as when you write dissertation. And there's also, is there anyone who wants to say something?
Yes, my doctor. Sorry to interrupt, please. Could you please be moving the slide as you move along? I think it's not moving.
So I'm still on the same slide.
Yes, still on the same slide. You should be moving it as you move along.
Yeah, I will. I'm just talking to the very same one that I'm having in front of me.
Okay, great. So, okay, great.
Yeah. Yes, it's just I use slides to guide me, and then I add. Yes, okay. So it depends on. So as I was saying, so if you're going to be doing literature review for a journal article, it will be not as extensive as it would be for a protocol or dissertation or critical analysis of data. So I think that is what I wanted to say in terms of the length and the yeah. So what would a literature review include? This is just the basics. It will be historical background to your research. So you need to say what happened before, what is currently happening related to your topic. Then what are the theories informing whatever it is that you want to be addressing in your literature review? What are the concepts that you want to test, okay? And in the process of putting this together, you need to have relevant definitions and terminology, okay? So because you want to, in the process, you want to show the gaps that are there in the specific area of interest, okay? And then what you also have to show the evidence that is there for your problem, okay? And in contrast, systematic review, in as much as you are going to, as you carry it out, you're going to do literature search or literature review. You need to have a clearly formulated question, okay? That will use systematic and explicit methods to identify, select, and critically appraise relevant research. So normally systematic reviews, we do them in order to address a specific research question, and it's not a document you use to then further go and carry out research. Systematic reviews, actually a paper, we call it desktop research. So you can have a whole dissertation on that is a systematic review. I think that's the main difference. Okay, so hence the processes are followed. The appraisal is very critical. It's very critically done, and you'll find that most of the time, people who will be critically reviewing literature is not one. So you have 3 different reviewers doing the same search, then comparing notes, and we'll go into that process. So it's a bit more intense and more systematic because it's research, actual research on its own. Okay, so another way of looking at systematic review, this is still your basics, is you're collecting empirical evidence that fits a pre-specified eligibility criteria. So when you're doing this process of systematic review, you need to, it should be clear what kind of literature you have. And when you set out your protocol, because you have your protocol for the systematic review, your eligibility or your selection criteria and inclusion and exclusion are very specific, okay? And the methods that you're going to carry out in terms when you're doing this review should be very explicit, systematic, in order to reduce bias, okay? So because you want to use, yes, ma'am? Yes, sir?
Sorry, so sorry. I mean, the slide is not moving. I think it will be better as you move along, you move the slide so that the participants can see the aspect in which you're discussing.
So I'm on systematic review, number 2. Are you there?
No, I think the screen.
Where are you?
I'm still saying the first page, the first PowerPoint. That is the first slide, slide 1. Except otherwise, is anybody seeing something else?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. Well, now it's moving. Okay. So
okay. Maybe it wanted me to use a different format. Okay. Yes. I was using. So are we there? Are we there now? So I was on this slide. Can you guys see?
Yes, we can see now. Now it's moving.
My apologies. I didn't understand. So it was moving on my side, but it's not moving on your side.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, you can
I'm
carry on.
So sorry. So should I go? But I think what I said, should I go back or you'll be fine?
You can go back and just briefly so that.
Okay. So I think the first point I started at was the literature review. Okay. That you guys saw, or I hope you heard, to say that literature review, there are 3 or 4 aspects or 4 reasons that you may be doing it for, and the intensity or content thereof or the length depends on what. So if we're going to be doing literature review for a journal article, it will be very concise, but the main point is you're still going to be looking at it at the data or the literature very objectively and critically. Okay. So as I said, what will your literature review do? So when you're doing literature review, you normally say you do a funnel approach. So you go into historic background to your research question, because remember you have a specific topic that you want to address. So for example, if it's HIV in children who are malnourished, so your background information on the topic will start there. What is there? What do we know about HIV and children who are malnourished? What are the theoretical concepts behind, say, for example, malnourishment and disease presentation or progression? Then you also then go into definitions of relevant terminology in the field of study that you are looking at. Okay. So as I said, what I said to you, I just quickly to say that in contrast to, in as much as systematic reviews involve literature review, the difference is that systematic review are actually the research itself. Okay, so you have a protocol submitted where you outline clearly that you want to do a systematic review on a specific topic. Okay, because I'm in science and healthcare, I'll talk about maybe you want to do a systematic review of antiretrovirals in the management of obese patients, okay, who are over the age of 65. So it has to be clearly so your research question has to be clearly formulated. And in the process, you then define what will be your inclusion criteria in terms of the studies or the papers that you'll be looking at, okay? Then you're then going to do it. And what I also then said was that this is often done as a group. So it's you don't often find systematic reviews done by an individual, because you need to check each other to make sure that as you select your articles using the criteria used, you come up with similar articles. You check each other if you use the same specifications. Any questions? Hello? There's interference.
Yes, I've sorted it.
Okay, thank you. So just a summary of the processes that you'd go through. So what is important is before you even start with your literature review, your research topic should be very clear, okay? It should be well defined. Your topic should be well defined so that you then know which words would be your keywords in your search. Then you then go and do your search processes. After you've done that, collected your relevant articles you came across, you will not obviously include all articles that you came across in the initial steps. So what you do, you read through them. Is it describing the type of population you're looking for? Is it the same scenario, same setup? Is it the same disease? Similar in terms of principle, in terms of your objectives, is it talking to similar concepts, okay? If it says so, you include it, okay? But then once you've done that, what is important is you then group your articles as you find them according to a theme. So for example, you have articles that deal specifically with prevalence of the disease, if it's a disease state, okay? Prevalence, progression, outcomes. So you'd have various articles that you came across and then you put them together in themes so that when you do your literature, you're able to combine all relevant articles under a specific topic because you did it before. And what is important is, I think all of us know it, as you do your bibliography, you'd have to use proper citation. So we'll go through that. Okay, thank you. So often we would use, especially for, remember we said you have to have a clearly defined research topic, or in the case of literature systematic review, you need to have a clearly defined research question. So often when we do that, we use what we call PICO. I hope some of you have come across it, where you have to be very specific about the population that you want to look at, or the socio-economic. So remember I talked about when I made an example of malnourished HIV positive patients, right? Then you have to say what kind of intervention you'll be looking at, what will be your comparator, then what are their outcomes. So what is it? Are you saying in your research question or postulation, malnourished HIV positive patients who are treated with lamivudine have better outcomes, or they gain weight more quickly than patients who are on different regimens? So that's very clearly defined question that you want to address in the process of literature review. Noah, can you please help with muting people? There's some interference.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, I've done that.
Pecora, ako ću čeći manje 45 mikrona, evo ga stavljamo ovdje dole na to se kaže tava, dakle sakupljač tih najfinijih čestica, dakle gdje se sakuplja najfinije čestice tava se kaže. I sad
I think you're muted. Take your mic, please.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, so I was saying at this point, should I just go on now to the actual practical way, or the practical that people will be, the practice of actually searching? Are there any questions, or should I wait for questions at the end?
Yes, questions at the end, and we can move on now.
Okay, thank you. So remember we said when you go into a search, before you start, you already have your research topic. You know exactly what you want to go and do, okay? So in your topic or title, so I talked about HIV positive patients who are malnourished and they are on lamivudine, okay? So we want to say, do they gain weight quicker, say for example. So when you look at your research topic, then you have to decide what will be your keyword, okay? So obviously I said HIV positive, it's one of the keywords, and malnourishment. So those are the type of combinations that I can come together. So what is key is HIV. So HIV and lamivudine, HIV and weight gain in pediatrics. So those are the types of combinations that you then go into, that you can use when you're doing your search, okay? So I use Pubmed. It's freely available. It's unlike Scopus where you have to have a subscription, or your library, if you're at a university, has to be subscribed to that particular site. So in terms of Pubmed, what do they use? They use your Boolean logic. So Boolean logic type of algebra is where you use words, where you use or, and not, okay? So those are or, and not. So what do we do? So we join two or more words. Hello? Ooh. We use two or more keywords, okay, with and to find all the articles with that word. So it's joining two words there that will find articles with all these words in each article, okay? Or we join two or more words with or. The first one is and, the other one is or. This one will find the articles with any one of the two, okay? With and, it has to find both of them. With or, it can be any one of the two. The other way is, I'm just giving you the basic background. The other way is using brackets, which enables you to do an and as well as or search at the same time. Okay. So I'm going to ask you if you have Pubmed. Okay. That's the link. So the first one, if you can, I just want you to try it on your own and you tell me. So I said COVID-19 and vaccination and healthcare workers in Pubmed, and see how many hits you get in terms of the number of articles you get. Okay. So that's the first one. But the twist is, when we write, authors write differently. You know, healthcare can be one word, or healthcare can be health and care separately. So I did the first one. I went to Pubmed and searched for COVID-19 and vaccination and healthcare workers. So I want you to note that when I used that combination, so I was using the one with and, okay? So it means all articles that will appear on the hits will have
Hello, ma'am. Are you with us? Dr. Matlala, are you with us? Yeah, no sound. Oh, okay. So while we wait on Doctor, I think we can all try this. She was trying to demonstrate, like, we can see the screen. She's trying to say we use 2 or 3 words with an and the sooner when you do that search, you have articles that are related to the words, the keywords that you type in the search engine or the search section in the search. I think, okay, Doctor is not yet back yet. So we can all try that, because this is a workshop, it's practical. So if you have a laptop or you have your phone, you can just go to Pubmed, type Pubmed, Pubmed, and then this is when you open the Pubmed page and you type COVID-19, the keywords are COVID-19, vaccination, healthcare workers. So all these words are connected by "and." So we can just use COVID-19 and vaccination and healthcare workers. So let us all try that. Let's try that and see. I've actually done it, and okay. Have you tried it? If you've done so, you can just put an I in the chat box.
Hello, Noah, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you. And
hello, Noah, can you hear me?
Great. Yes, great.
Today we have, in South Africa, in Pretoria, we have load shedding. So
yes, ma'am. So you can share your screen.
I'm sorry.
Again. You can share your screen again.
Okay.
So what I was trying to do, I was following up in what you were actually trying to demonstrate. Basically, was having the keywords COVID-19, vaccination, healthcare workers, and connecting it with an or on the Pubmed search and see what you can get. So I was just trying to reiterate that while you were disconnected. So you can continue, ma'am.
Thank you. So you can still hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Loud and clear.
Okay. All right. So as I was saying, and so when you look for articles that have all those COVID-19 vaccine vaccination and healthcare workers written in that way, you will see you have 193 hits, okay? Then we can then vary. As I said, when you then have somebody writing it differently, so maybe you can, guys, can try and see, write the same thing, COVID-19 and vaccination and healthcare workers, but the healthcare workers should be one word, not 2 words. And you see the number of hits you get, okay?
Okay,
so you see, when we do that, so we moved from 193 hits. Yes, Noah? Noah, are you here? Were you saying something?
Yes, great. So what they are typing in the chat box, the I means they are following up and they've done the search engine and they are having responses as you are showing off in the screen. So that is what they are doing.
Okay, yes. So just
they are with us.
Yeah, okay. So you can see that the only thing we did was to write healthcare workers differently, right? So when we do that, we move from 193 to 303, okay? Then we can try another variation, okay? So remember that how we call healthcare workers, some people in the articles might have said healthcare personnel, okay? So I then did that and said COVID-19 and vaccination and healthcare personnel. So when I did that search, and remember personnel and workers, I mean, are interchangeable, okay? When I did that search, I came up with 128, né? So, and the only thing that we varied was the last keyword, or, you know, how we coin. So we said healthcare worker as 2 separate words. We got 193. And remember, now you are busy doing your literature search, né? So you have 193 articles to go through. When you do a different variation, you have 303. Now we just change, you know, you use a synonym, then it's gone down to 198, right? 128. So still the same concepts, we just use different words. So I hope colleagues, so if you combine, imagine, so it would be 193 plus 303 plus 128 articles that you think you have to now go through in order to get to do your literature review properly, okay? So if you want to then sort out, try to make it that it covers all things relevant, né? You can then come up with a different formulation, né? Or anyway, this is another way. I just thought, let me just do healthcare. Remember, I did healthcare separately. So now when you do healthcare as a separate word, we come up with 201 hits, okay? So it's still the same concepts, but it's how we worded, you know, the keywords, combine them, and how we use synonyms. So these might all be very relevant and important to our literature search, okay? It's important to note that. So when you look at that, we have so many, it's when you combine all those, it's quite a lot, né? And as I said, because of the inconsistencies in how we write words, how the synonyms used, okay? But we can then use, combine these. Remember, they were using and only, we didn't use or, né? In our Boolean logic, okay? So we can combine the terms into one search string, okay? Try to get, you know, combine all the aspects together. So what do? We said COVID-19 and vaccination, brackets, open bracket, healthcare workers or healthcare personnel or healthcare personnel. So we're saying those articles should have any of those. Okay, so to make sure that we don't go, should have COVID-19 and vaccination, and with the various ways of writing healthcare, healthcare, and various ways of calling it. We say workers or personnel. Okay, so I hope you did that and you see. So it means it will include all the articles that are relevant. So when we go to see, so how many hits do we get when you do that? So combined, so it's got all the variations now. When you go into, so all in all, everything is 363, and you get it once off when you do your Boolean logic properly. So now you've got all these 363 results. The question is, can they all be relevant? Okay. Then you have to think, how do you then narrow it further, right? So you can say, well, let's look at Africa, okay? Or we can say in South Africa, or we can say in Europe or developed or low-income countries. So, or you can even look at at a clinic level. So you try to make it fair, reduce it further down to a specific area of interest, okay? That's the next combination. So what do we do? I chose South Africa because I'm in South Africa. So you say COVID-19 and vaccination and South Africa with all the other possible combinations of healthcare workers and personnel. So what did I get? I got 7 hits. Because I said I want all this combination, but they should come from a specific area. Papers that were published based on South African data. Okay, so depending on what you are interested in East Africa, in SADC area, so you can, depending on how wide. And this you can do it as you go along. As I said, as I told you guys, when you write a literature review, you start big, so you can do the 307, you can say worldwide, in Africa, in Southern Africa, in South Africa. So you look at, so when you're sorting out your literature review in terms of funneling, that's what you would do. Okay. Are we fine? I can go on. So what do we do? So you have these 7 articles. Will I know that it's my area of interest? Are they talking about what I'm interested in? So I could say attitudes of healthcare workers towards COVID-19 vaccination in South Africa. Maybe that's what I'm interested in, okay? So the only way that I'll know that this article is actually relevant to my literature review, what do? I go to my abstract, and I'm hoping that you can see that area where I've highlighted, where you go on to on Pubmed. It's sorted by best match. So you go to the abstract and you go through the abstract. You select the abstract so that you can then go through it. Okay. So if you think it's relevant, you'll then select it to say, okay, I think from having gone through it quickly, of the 7 things, this is the one that is relevant to me. I think I'll want to use it. Once you've selected it, what do I do? If I want to see the full article, normally at the end of your Pubmed, that particular article that you clicked on, that you selected, maybe there's a link to the full article. You just go there, click it, download it. Okay. If it's not available, you can just make, you can ask your librarian, if you're at a university, to say, this is the abstract, this is the journal, can you find it for me? Or you can actually go to write to one of the authors, the main author or the submitting authors, if you write politely and request. Because remember that for me as an author of an article, it's important that my article is cited. So if you are going to request my article, it means you're considering using it in your research. So that's another way that you get the article. If it's not available directly from your library, or it's not the link, you don't get the full text. So those are the options, but I'm sure you know of other options that you can go through, or you can purchase it. Some of them want you to purchase it if you feel very strongly about its relevance. So that's what you do. But it's there, it's available, you can take it. So now you have your full article. So that's really the process of Pubmed in terms of acquiring or getting hold of relevant articles for your literature search, okay? And I'll just summarize basically Scopus, and I'm using, I looked at Scopus because I know that a lot of people, when they do systematic review, they like Scopus in addition to Cochrane. So I'm just going to do what is easier, or what is there available. I did Pubmed because it's available to me. So that is your Scopus address. So in a similar manner, it uses keywords. So you have open brackets, close hyphens to use your keywords. Okay. I don't have access to Scopus, but if you go to Scopus, I hope some of you will have. So if you key in a keyword in, it then generates a list of articles, just like what happened with the Pubmed, the way we did it. But what is important is use those hyphens. Then you can then use the next keyword, it gives you results. The next keyword, it will give you results. Then what is nice about Scopus is you can then say to it, combine all these, combine the first search. So you do a #1 and #2 and #3. So it's going to combine all those articles that were searched with each keyword that was used, okay? You have those, then you can then further limit it or in terms of the years that you want it to look at, the document type, the subject area. Then you can then, once that is done, very similar to Pubmed, you can then look at the articles that are, and what is also important or interesting about Scopus is that it shows you the number of times the article has been cited. So for me, it's always the more cited, the more important an article. So you can start with the most cited from the ones that were identified in terms of limiting your approach. Okay. So I just want to I didn't want to go into systematic review the whole detail because I think it's another process, another lecture or workshop on its own. But I think what is important, how we went through the Pubmed systematic review in terms of looking at systematic review. But what is important, formulated, following the PICO, so to say, what are you looking at as against what? And what is the outcome of interest? Okay, improvement effects is what you do for articles that you are now going to include in your systematic sites that are possible. You are then going to compare what you are able to generate using the very similar search words. Okay. Then you can I'll show you the Prisma flow diagram that you use. So, which is similar to what we did. We went and looked at the abstracts. So the only way you can go through this Prisma flow is going through the abstracts. And remember, with your systematic review, you have specific and clearly defined inclusion and exclusion criteria in terms of what types of research papers do you want. Do you want randomized controlled trials? Do you want open label trials if it's trials, so that should be clear. Do you want studies that were done in patients who were pregnant only? Or, you know, so those are your specific inclusion criteria that you need to go into. And I will not go into meta-analysis because I think as well, it's still another study, another workshop. But that's, in terms of processes, it's very similar to a point where you are going to look at your abstracts to say, are they eligible? Yeah? So you could be using your Pubmed. You will be using your Pubmed when you do systematic review. You will use your Scopus or your Cochrane. Okay. So remember with a Prisma flow diagram. So remember when you look at the one that we look at where we did the COVID-19 and the various combinations, we had 363 articles to go through, okay? Then you then go through, when you report, you have to say now, of those, what were, from that 363, which ones were duplicates? So it's the same study, but it appeared twice. You excluded. So of those records, you have to say, what did I exclude? Of full articles assessed for eligibility, so the abstract might have looked for detail of the article. You might find that it doesn't meet your inclusion criteria, you take it out. So normally there's always quite a number, okay? Amongst those, then you say, because remember, then you say, what was the total number that I came up with? Okay, so that's sort of a Prisma. So this is what you would then describe in your results when you are presenting your systematic review. So you have to go through this to say, I made so many hits, went through so many, I excluded so many, and I went further so I think that's a whole diagram in terms of how you then synthesize or, you know, extract information relevant to you. So one of the things that is important when you're doing literature review is consistency in terms of how you reference. And we use and other people might use other systems. So depending on your publications requirements or journal articles requirements or university requirements, you can then use you know, what citation manager that will then cite you consistently. So it helps you to do it's important to cite this particular Harvard or APA or, you know, you then just remove your comma and everything else you references on your Word document. Okay. So what I was describing is remember I said you have your full text where you can access, but before that when you do my email article, then it says you can click. So it depends on the type you find, you then copy the citation. This way you get the names right, the publication's name right, the title of the paper right. So it makes sure that whatever you're citing is correctly cited and can be reproduced. Okay. So that's just citation. Then another sort of a tip is to say, the reason you go through your abstracts is to really say, do I need it for you know, to include in my literature review? Because you have many articles written, okay? And the other one that I can give you is that keywords used in these specific articles. You know, when you're doing search, you will find you only have 7 articles and you're worried, oh, my literature review will not be sufficient. So the keywords used in those particular articles that you found, you can also use them to see if you cannot find more information that you can use for literature review. And also, on the very same articles, you have a list, the bibliography. That bibliography can also be your source of your literature that you can use in your review. I think those are the main, some of the things that, you know, maybe we are not told about or we forget, but it's very helpful to expand and make your literature search richer. Okay. So how do you skim through an article? You look at the author general, the article title, the abstract, the introduction. An introduction will sort of give you an idea of, are they looking at similar concepts? Is their conceptual framework similar to mine? You know, is the theoretical framework similar to what I think? Ne? And the first sentence of each paragraph also then tells you, is it something that is really relevant to what I'm interested in? Is it going to add to my literature review? Okay. So once you've done all this, what is important is to then you as I already told you guys, you group your articles in terms of according to themes, because in your journal article or in your literature review of your protocol, you have specific titles, so you know which articles deal with which title. You go to that in that particular folder. You then go and do your matrices or, you know, combine them. Okay, so this is just an example. I took one of the ones that you might have seen when you're doing your search now. So where you sort of creating a golden thread to say, what is this topic? What is this particular article talking about? What is the purpose of the study? What is the method that they carried out when they were collecting data? Did they have a sample size? What were the findings? What was the theme that was coming through? So you have various articles. So you then say, what are the similarities amongst, because remember you group them according to themes. So what are the similarities amongst these articles, and what is unique about each one of them? So each one will have some other information that you could use that is unique to it, but still relevant. Okay. So that's how you sort of sieve through or group it in order to then write up your literature review. Because remember, the most important thing is you need to avoid plagiarism, so to speak. Yeah? So you try to, when you group the themes together, so you can look at the themes and write in your own words what they say, then cite all the articles as you would do your normal citation. So it's important to look for golden threads in your articles, okay? So you need to look at signposts, they call them titles, subtitles, headings that identify the direction of flow or being followed. And then the bibliography of that, remember I said on Scopus, normally you look at the most cited, but even the citations used in an article, how comprehensive it is, tells you that the author knew what they were doing. They are very familiar with the topic, therefore they were able to find, you know, information related to that particular topic. And this is just, I think, what I've already talked to you about in terms of how do you write. So when you write a literature search, you start broad. As you say, HIV in Europe is so, the prevalence is so much, or let me rather talk about renal failure in Europe is so much. And then in sub-Saharan Africa, in Africa is so much, in sub-Saharan Africa is so much, then in where I am in South Africa is so much. So you need to categorize, sort of do a funnel approach. So broad, then to the point where you are, okay? And then you say in South Africa, what studies are similar, are looking at what I'm looking at, okay? So I think another tip is to avoid long quotations. You know, you have a very long, because that then puts you at risk of plagiarizing, because you're trying to write everything that that person wrote, and you then, you know, you don't know how to be creative about it, okay? And another way of avoiding plagiarism is to use matrices. So I wanted to show you this, but I unfortunately can't link. So in matrices, you have a table where you say, I have 5 articles, okay? So you have from Mudehi to Noah to Sarisha. So those are the articles. You then say, what is the population that they looked at? What were the prevalence? What was so about each? Then that way, you just combine in your own words what was the themes related to that particular subject. So maybe it's the population, the prevalence, and the outcomes, but you then are able to then write it in your own words if you have those matrices to then combine. I think that is all that I could think of. I hope I somehow addressed what you wanted to address. I know that in my head, you still would need to do the systematic review more thoroughly and more intensely if you wanted that. But the approaches are the same. It's only that in systematic review, you have more individuals involved. You have more specific inclusion criterion than when you would be doing just an exclusion criteria than when you would be doing just a literature review. Noah, that is all I have for you guys. I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's been such a breathtaking session. Even though we had some challenges with 1 or 2 technicalities, but I believe it's really informative. So before going through the let me first of all take a question from the chat box. Someone, Saroj, the person says, can you explain a little bit about theme of an article?
Can I explain a little bit about what? I didn't hear that.
The theme of an article. The theme of an article.
Maybe I don't understand. So the theme of an article. So the theme of an article, if I understand you well, is predetermined by the title, right? So if I'm going to be doing, so I'll do a cost comparison of cost analysis of hemodialysis versus the cost of providing hemodialysis versus peritoneal dialysis in renally impaired patients, and it's from a provider's perspective, right? So obviously, what I would go into would be, how do I cost? You know what? So when you do your funnel, is what is the general cost of treating a peritoneal and dialysis? But if I say from direct cost, I mean normally to be, say, for example, I could say from a provider's perspective. So in my analysis, in my article, or in my literature or introduction, I'll have to talk about what do I mean by perspective, what are direct costs, and what have other studies found in terms of, say, the direct cost of peritoneal dialysis and review. So you give a background of why do we cost, what are a provider's perspective, what has been found elsewhere and what has been found here. I hope that it sort of answers, if I heard correctly.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. So the other question is the person is asking that whether you can copy and paste the information without summarizing it or changing it to his or her
But that's
own.
a big no-no, I said, ne? Big no-no. Yeah, I mean, if you turn it in, the authors are going to kill you. So that's why we use matrices, right? So when you have a matrix, you have a specific, so you want to look at prevalence in a specific population. So you're saying article 1 said it was mainly, so let's talk about renal hemodialysis, right? It was mainly given to patients who were in my country, we like race, who were black, ne? Population demographics. And you can then say in another country, in the US, they found it was mainly white patients. So and it will be different articles, right? So you're talking about the population at risk, but because you looked at different articles, you'll just say generally it's more prevalent in this part, in people who are above the ages of 65. So it ranges from 10 to 20. Then because you'd have, so maybe article by Mudia will say in her study it was 10, in Noah's study it was 15, in Akriti's study it was 20. So you'll say it ranges, ne, from 20 to from 10 to 20% in America. So you write it in your own words, then you cite this, and you have 3 different articles that support that. But you should never, ever cut and paste.
Okay, I think that one is clear enough. Scenarios like that normally do happen. I think when doing my BPharm dissertation, we had a student who always he likes to ask such questions because he's so lazy that he doesn't want to just fine tune the words, and he's always in trouble with the lecturers.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes,
yeah,
that one is so clear now. So we have another question from Hassan. He's saying, when using found literatures in writing an introduction section of a manuscript, are we to include all the supposedly useful informative articles for inclusiveness, or we are to just use the articles that are relevant to the story we are telling with the introduction?
It should be relevant. So if your introduction, so introduction normally, as I said, it's a funnel. Ne? You say what is known theoretically about this particular aspect, if there are any theoretical frameworks, right? So the theory might be old, but there could be new changes to the theory. So you combine those two, then I think so it's what is relevant to what you want to talk about, not everything, because you can have, so the reason you use matrices, or you can actually code. I think you will see a list if you do it's Harvard and Vancouver. You'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 articles, ne? They're talking about the same so it's what is the essence of that? So you use that. So it doesn't have to be just new, it should be all that you think we're addressing that particular aspect that you include.
Okay, thank you so much for that, ma'am. So if you have your questions, you can type them in the chat box. If you want to unmute and read out your questions, you can just type I in the chat box, and I'll give you the floor. So while we wait for questions, I have this question, ma'am. I was just wondering, probably for young students who are planning to write their dissertation or their thesis in their undergrad, what tips would you give them when it comes to, after they've done the literature search, just like what is just demonstrated with the Pubmed, the Scopus, and the likes? So I was wondering, after they've done the search and they have like a bunch of articles, you explained the funnel wherein you have to break it down until like the one that is closer to your country. Let's say, for example, I'm searching for something on COVID-19, and there is hundreds of research papers on it, and probably in different parts of the world. So what I'm trying to say here is, what are the key components in which we are like I'll be looking out for in that particular paper that I think might like be beneficial to me in my own research. So as an undergrad, yes, ma'am.
So you know what is interest or what is important is often your objectives direct the type of literature that you are going to. So look at your objectives. So if you're going to say, so this is how you look at your article. So if you say one of the objectives is to describe the demographics of patients presenting with peritoneal dialysis in a said hospital. So when you combine, as you read and isolate and select articles, you have this in mind. So you remember, you'll say demographics. So I know that article A to D will be dealing with demographics. You put it in its own box, in its own folder. And then the next one is outcomes, if there are outcomes. You then you look, when you go through your articles from the abstracts, it will tell you, okay, this one is highlighting the outcomes of patients on dialysis. Therefore, I'll put it under the C. Very clear about what you're doing as you do your literature. So have your objectives in mind, because you know that the literature is supposed to guide you towards answering your objectives. Then you put those things that way. I find that it's easier.
Okay, that's so great, because that would actually help the individual in tailoring down the research to what he or she is looking out for in the objective. So the most important thing that's in which you're trying to say is, in doing the literature, after you've done the literature search, in reviewing the documents, I should always have my objectives on the side way, and reading through the document, I should align it with my objectives so that will guide me what I should look for in the paper.
Yeah, because your supervisor, if you don't do that, your supervisor will actually say, but you haven't got any, because remember, it's almost like your literature review is giving you a theoretical, we call it theoretical framework, right? So or to say, but why do you have this objective, right? You haven't said what the literature is saying about this particular objective. So the literature should talk to your objectives as well.
Great. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. So we have a question in the chat box from Charles. The question says, thank you, doctor. Please, my question is, in writing literature reviews, are there limits to the number of articles that could be referenced, especially in cases where you have voluminous articles that are relevant? Did you get the question, ma'am?
Would be lucky to have that. No, some articles, general articles limit you. They'll tell you up to 12 or up to 20 references. So that guides you. Some don't. But for me, it's like, really, I mean, if I've found 5 articles saying the same thing, why did I go to the 10th one? So it's up to you as a writer, but you need to be concise. I mean, it's good to demonstrate that you've read, but it can't be so much. So one, journals can be prescriptive. 2, it's up to you. Really, for me, it's like you're over, my son calls it flexing. Now you're flexing in terms of how many journals you went through to get to 2 sentences. It's up to you.
Okay, ma'am. I think that one is clear. So I just typed in the chat box again. You can type I if you want to unmute and ask questions. This should be an interactive session, because this is a workshop. It's not like a one-way presentation and lecture. No, it should be very interactive. So you could ask your questions in the chat box, or you could simply just type an I, and I will unmute, and I will ask you to unmute, and you can ask your question. So, ma'am, while we wait for the question, I was just wondering whether if you could just briefly share with us some of your your journey through research, in which things in which you've worked on that have been so beneficial to you in your journey in research, in which us as young students and aspiring young researchers could look up to and work towards as a form of motivation, ma'am.
Okay, so I can tell you what I didn't do, which I should have done if I had known. One of the things that I found is that it's important to have, as you set out as a researcher, you should identify as early as you can your area of expertise or area of interest. Because for you to be a recognized expert in ABCD, you should show a train of work output related to that particular topic or area of interest. So it's very important. Set out what is your area of interest. Of course, it can change, but it helps guide you in terms of what kind of research you're going to conduct. And I believe for you to be able to do that, you should have a mentor, okay? So it's important to identify, find an expert, and if they are willing to mentor you, they can mentor you because they've walked through the journey. They can tell you what to do and what not to do. And as much as you can, for every paper or research that you carry out, try to publish. Most articles, journals that are Pubmed referenced are very good often, or at least that's what that's the first point. But no matter what, even if they reject you, try and get it out there, because that is another way of being recognized. I think those are the three things that I wish I had known when I first started, which I think are very important too. And I think the fourth one is try to find collaborators from other countries as much as you can, form networks, because that helps you in terms of raising funds and all that. I think those are the four main things.
Okay, I think those are pretty much very much things to note. Of course, your area of interest, and of course, you have to find a mentor and publish and to collaborate. I think I get that one very clearly, and I think we could learn from it because, especially your area of interest, I think we have so many modules or subjects, as the case may be, in pharmacy, and it's always advisable to know which one you have interest in, so that that would inform the area that you want to do the research. Because we've seen situations where we have students that they've chosen a topic, and the sooner they go at the middle of it and they couldn't complete it, and they lost interest as the case may be, just because of the fact that from the start they had they did not choose what they actually really want, So I think that's a very good advice, and it's something to note. Of course, a mentor is key. Yes, of course, we all need mentors to guide us and all. Yes, ma'am. So with regards to publishing, the last part of it, it's very much, it's something which is limited in Africa. We have limited data for for situations. We have so many problems in Africa, but we have very limited data and all. So how do you think we could find a way to navigate through that and see to have more published papers before we have Charles? Charles, you're next. Yes, ma'am.
I think we are very rich in terms of the data out there. There's a lot that we can do. We just are not. I think we should do as much. There's, when you look at people's papers internationally, you'd go to the US and you see these people or Europe excited about something. You're thinking, gosh, we do that in our country, and these people think it's that important. But I think for us, because it has been there for so long, we think it's normal. So I think opportunities are there to carry out research. We just have almost become numb about it, or ignorant. But I think so. I think we can do a lot of research to do the research often, it's not very, you can do very simple research that doesn't necessarily need a lot of patience in a small setting, that can still be published. I think the only challenge is that when you start going to international papers, not going, they need larger numbers. Maybe they need more than 100 participants. If you maybe were interviewing using a quantitative interview guide, they'll want a bit more numbers. So we have to be conscious of the numbers of participants that are sort of seen to be acceptable for a paper to be published. Yeah, and try anyway. You know, just getting one paper published gives you courage to say, okay, I can do it. So it can be at home, in Africa, anyway.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So we have Charles. He wants to unmute and ask his question. So Charles, you have the floor, please.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Matlala, for this wonderful session. I've been so blessed, and I think I'm learning quite a lot. And please, the question I want to ask right now is, you know, I've had some encounters in me reading, going through some research and articles, and there's this that that I usually come across, and it really strikes me anytime I read such statements. In some researches, they do say that there hasn't been any research or data or any evidence on so and so, you know. And sometimes I really ask myself, how is it possible? How are they able to conclude that there hasn't been a research on this and that and that? I mean, there's a whole lot of information out there. Were they able to comb through the whole internet to come to the conclusion that there wasn't a research or any evidence on what they were so talking about? So I want to find out whether there's a technique for doing that.
So I think when you are doing a research, when you're a researcher, you are saying you've done thorough research. You went to Scopus, Pubmed, and if you didn't find studies, so you might find that somebody has done a study, a similar study, but they didn't publish it. So you can, so if you're saying I went through all the processes of literature review and there were none from South Africa about this particular topic, you're right. I mean, if there's nothing out there, there's nothing out there. So I think it often to be based on where they searched and the region they were looking at or specific population that they were looking at. But it doesn't mean similar research hasn't been done or that such information doesn't exist. What they're saying, what they're implying is it's not out there in published format that people can reference.
Okay, please. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. So please, the floor is still open for questions and all. And yes, I think we could take a few more before we close the session and all. So, ma'am, with regards to, I think you've mentioned Pubmed, you've mentioned Scopus, but I think we haven't heard much about Google Scholar, which I think it's a very good search engine as well. So could you please shed light on literature review using Google Scholar as the site?
So Google Scholar, you can remember the Boolean logic helps you. Ne? So you can still, how you go into it is still the same principle. It's only that I use PubMed and Scopus as examples. But remember, Boolean is trying to say to you, it's trying to limit or guide the search to find those specific keywords in the articles that are used. But even though Google Scholar, you can just use any other combination. But I think it's important to use a Boolean approach to make it more precise. It's still the same.
Okay. So for a...
Yeah, it's still the same.
So for a young researcher, which of the two, between Google Scholar and PubMed, which one do you think would be most adequate for them to do the literature search?
Both.
Both.
Both are. Yeah, because remember, you want to say I went everywhere, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because some articles will not be in PubMed, they'll be in Google Scholar. That's why I gave you all those others. So any search engine that has allowance for academic papers, you should go to it. Don't limit yourself. That's why I said with Scopus, the only challenge is that it requires a license. Google Scholar, PubMed, free. Why not? So they're both important. I just happen to look at PubMed.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for that. Because the reason why I asked, in my undergrad last year, when I was doing my dissertation, I used more of Google Scholar, and it really helped me. Yes, I use PubMed, but I use more of Google Scholar. So when I didn't hear you mention anything about it, I was like, I'm a big fan of Google Scholar. So like,
yeah.
So okay. So since there are no more questions, I would ask Miss Karima, do you have anything to say, any questions or any words?
Nothing. It's just that it was a great session. Thank you all for this amazing session. Thank you for your doctor. And thank you, Noah, for organizing such a great and informative one. And thank you to all our attendees. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Karima, for that. And thank you so much to all the participants. Thank you so much to Dr. Muleli Matlala. And honestly, I was just going to say this, like, we actually contacted her like just under a week because the initial speaker, we had some challenges, like she wasn't well. So she had to recommend Dr. Matlala for us, and under a week we could plan and have this session. I mean, I would say thank you so much. I really do appreciate the energy, the back and forth emails that we've shared. I think like we've shared like a bunch of emails like in the last few weeks. And I really do appreciate your patience and everything that has to do with this webinar session. It's really informative, and we really do appreciate you. I mean, taking your time, and despite all the challenges, but trying to squeeze and to honor the invitation on behalf of someone. And now it's one of the best sessions in which I've actually attended, and I really do appreciate it. So on behalf of the International Pharmaceutical Student Federation, we really do appreciate you, and we say thank you, and thank you to all the participants. And please stay tuned. Follow our social media pages. We'll be having like the second webinar session and the second workshop, as Karima rightfully said in the start. Like, we have 3 webinar sessions and 5 workshops. So we've had 1 webinar session on the 20th, and today 26th. We've had we've just completed the we're about to complete the first workshop on the global research project, and we thank you so much for being part of it. So we advise you all to follow the social media pages and register for the next sets of workshop and research webinar that will be coming up. We'll have 2 more webinar sessions and 4 workshops, and we hope to see more participants and more participation from you all. So thank you so much, and God bless you all. So you could kindly unmute your mic and say thank you and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noah.
Thank you.
Bye. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
and bye.
Bye.